Hello, family members. Hope you're having a nice day today. I want to talk to you today about something that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, being as I am deaf in this ear. I was watching Drag Race, and as usual, you never watch an episode of Drag Race where the captions are right, you know? Like, think about it. It's such an insular community with so many like in jokes and niche references and made up words, sometimes made up on the spot words. You'd have to be a real super fan and really, really paying attention to make sure that you got it. But it's really annoying when it like completely changes the meaning of what someone said. Like on the episode, somebody said, Hormona Lisa is pissed. And it was captioned as, Hormona Lisa is best. Which doesn't actually make any sense at all. Not in that context. But still, and pissed is not even like that weird of a word. Like there's a lot weirder stuff that they say on Drag Race than that. So, yeah, I don't know. Kind of frustrating. I think it was like maybe a few months back, there was that whole thing about like Google using YouTubers' captions to like train their models or whatever. And that was really frustrating to me because the response was like kind of ableist, honestly. Like I remember Hank Green, who is generally a pretty good dude, getting like really mad about it. And like, I paid good money for that and they stole my property. It's like, you paid money so that you would have good captions and you could include people like me. And then once that work was done, it costs you nothing if they just take that work and build from it. And the end result is better captions. Like, this is an example of the way that capitalist ideology makes you think of intellectual property as a commodity, and instead of thinking about what it actually is. Like, why wouldn't you want to help make it easier for people who are hearing impaired to be able to get accurate captions, especially when we're talking about a like learning channel that is going to use terminology that you're not going to necessarily see on other types of YouTube channels. Like, yeah, that situation is so frustrating to me. It's like captions. I think another thing that really, really annoys me about captions, this is so insulting, is when you do auto captioning, like on YouTube or anywhere really, when it is transcribing words, they bleep out cuss words, whether or not they're bleeped out on the actual video. So it's basically treating anyone who is hearing impaired as if they need to have this censored. It's infantilizing, It's like, why would you censor something just for the hearing impaired when it's not censored for the hearing audience? It's very annoying. And It's really frustrating when they don't line up properly. Oh my gosh. One of my neighbors just peeled off on some sort of vehicle that he probably thinks is super cool. At the same time that a big gust of wind went up, and I felt like the world was ending for half a second. That was wild. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, like, I get a little frustrated when people forget that accessibility needs to be always available and available to everyone equally. Like, I get really annoyed when, they have music videos that don't have captions, because I love music and I'm hearing impaired. I can't hear the vocals very well compared to the instrumentation, and it's really hard for me to understand lyrics. And it's really weird. My relationship with music is way different than most people, because when I listen to a song, it is more about the vibe, the instrumentation, how fun it is to sing along to, because I love to sing along to songs. And it's not about the lyrical meaning. Like, I don't, that sometimes just does not even register. I can listen to a song 1,000 times before I'd even notice what it's about, because my brain just doesn't get the lyrics fed to it very well, and it's much easier to focus on all the other parts that are fascinating. Yeah. Like, I think it's really funny when people assume that if you're hearing impaired, that music doesn't mean anything to you. That is so far from the truth, Like, for one thing, not everybody who is hearing impaired has no hearing. There are people like me. This ear, just fine. This ear, mid-range tones, nothing, And so, like, I got a hearing aid when I was in college, like, 25 years ago or some wild stuff, because I'm old lady now. And I couldn't really use it because I could use it in class, but I couldn't use it in, like, the cafeteria, because all I would hear is the people washing the dishes in the back, because making all of the noise louder in here didn't help. I had to kind of figure out how to make things work for myself. And, for the most part, I was able to do that. But it doesn't mean that it isn't nice to have good accommodations and good captions. Drives me crazy. The thing that drives me crazy? While we're talking about captions, I gotta say this. Creators, please stop putting text at the bottom of your screen. This is where the captions go. If you put something here, I can't read it, because this is where the captions are. Okay? Okay. That is a very big pet peeve of mine. But, it's not just things like, for the hearing impaired, I have a doctor that is in this beautiful old building, and it is accessible in the sense that you can go around to the loading dock and do all this crazy stuff. So every time that I've ever been there, I just dragged my walker up like 3 steps, which is really hard, and you have to hold open this really heavy door. It was accessible in theory, but in practice, it was a nightmare, And it was the sketchiest, but most adorable little elevator in the world. That's the other thing. Like, people think of elevators as like a luxury. Well, that's nice and for you and everything, but if you don't need it, but when you need it, it's not a luxury, Curb cuts. Oh my gosh, they're always like pointed weird directions and stuff like that. Like, I don't know why you would spend the time and money to do something and not do it right. You know, not really make whatever it is accessible. You know? Like, I get it. I get that the stigma against disabled people has been so strong historically that the idea of all public buildings being able to accommodate everyone is still sort of a, new concept. And so there's a lot of old historical buildings that just weren't made that way. But it sucks. It just sucks. It sucks when you're morbidly obese and the seats in the theater are too small for your booty to fit in, I mean, it's just that we live in a world that is hostile to people who are not the normal shape and size. Really, really tall guys. My dad can very rarely find a car that he can fit in. And he's like 6'3", okay? He's not even like extraordinarily tall. And short people are extremely disadvantaged in the opposite way in cars because the safety systems are not meant to fit someone their size. Well, thank you, Casey. Anyway, there's no point in having half-assed accessibility, Well, I mean, there's some point, but we shouldn't have to settle for it. That's really the crux of it, is I genuinely think that, we deserve better. I genuinely think that we deserve to have, dignity. I know that seems to be a strange concept these days, that everyone deserves some dignity, but, I think we do. It's just tiring when it's very clear to you that the world that you live in doesn't understand you and has no interest in trying to, It's like when I got cancer, it was something that came up in one of my chronic disease groups the other day. And they were like, talking about how different people react when they find out that you have cancer versus a chronic illness. And I'm like, look, I've had both, and my cancer was substantially easier to deal with, but that was because of the kind of cancer I have and the kind of chronic illness I have, It's just weird luck of the draw in a bad luck sort of sense. One of the first times I went out with my rollator, I was with my partner at the time and my goddaughter, and we went to Disney Springs, which is like what I refer to it as the free part of Disney. It's just, shopping and restaurants and, like a few little like touristy things, It used to be called Downtown Disney. It's really just there for people who are like staying for a week and they need like a day to do something different than just go to parks or whatever. But I love it there. I love going there and shopping, window shopping especially. And I was really excited to take them there. My partner had never been before. And my goddaughter, I think it was her first time too. So I was pretty excited about the whole thing. And I remember walking around in the big like World of Disney store that's like 4 storefronts all connected or something like that. It's a big, huge thing. And nearly having a panic attack because the aisles were just wide enough for me to fit. And then like people kept coming and standing in front of me or behind me, and it was like really, I was feeling so claustrophobic. And I was just like, I've got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. You know? Like, it was technically accessible, but it was laid out in a way where, you know, that it was not comfortable for me to be able to even go through and look at all the pretty stuff that I was there to look at. You know? Because I think I'm a dragon. I like to hoard gems and stuff. And I can tell you another thing. My rollator is not held up very well, and I have not used it that much. It's surprising to me how like flimsy it is, and it wasn't that cheap, you know. Like, I got a good one, and I thought I did, and you know. The other thing that like drives me crazy is like when you see people complain about things like pre-peeled oranges or other, you know, like easy packaging type items, things that do really trivial tasks being marketed to the general public, because really those are more for accessibility. That's more for people who have specific needs than it is for, you know, like just some randos, you know. But the thing is, if they can at least kind of market it towards a broad audience, it's hard to make it be, you know, available, widely available and affordable for all disabled people who need it. You know, we kind of need to have wider, you know, able-bodied people buying into and using the accessibility features that we need too, because their presence in the conversation legitimizes the existence of the accessibility feature. Think about that, you know? Like, it's just I mean, it's a lot easier to get little gadgets for your kitchen that would work for you if you have like tardive dyskinesia or other stuff like that. And that's because some of those products were made for broad groups. You know, now that we have the internet, it's a little bit more possible for people to innovate with a more specific group in mind. You know, like those really awesome spoons that like stabilize if a person has like a shaking hand, stabilizes the food so that they can actually still be able to feed themselves and have their dignity, you know? And it's kind of sad that, you know, that's not something, that's a specialty item that people who need it are probably not going to always be able to get it, you know? And that's kind of frustrating. It's frustrating that we have all these innovations and things that can make people's lives better, but they're just not broadly available. You know, I always think it's really funny anytime I see anyone talk about like overpopulation or, you know, we don't have enough food or whatever. We have so much more food than we need for the amount of people that exist in this world. It is just pure politics that gets in the way. And along that same vein, the same frustrating political reality of this geopolitical nightmare that we exist in, is the exact same thing happening for like disabled people and being able to access things that would make their lives better. You know? Every time you see about a person having to do a fundraiser to get a wheelchair or a walker or a prosthetic or any sort of item that is going to make a person's life easier who is already dealing with so many massive challenges. It's frustrating. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be that the quality of your life is so, random. you know, all just happens to be about luck. Well, family members, I'm gonna have to wrap it up, but I hope you've enjoyed my little lecture today. You did get to see, I think, basically all of the animals except for Socks, maybe. Don't you think so, Kim? Yeah? Kimmy says hi. All right, family members, have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you later.